It was supposed to be a typical week. Michael, my husband, had arranged everything. His friend Jalen would be staying with us for 2 weeks while attending a seminar in Texas. I had no idea that this decision would unravel everything I thought I knew about myself. When Michael called to tell me that Jalen had arrived, I was sitting in the living room sipping my coffee. I remember how calm his voice sounded on the phone, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "Hey babe, Jalen's here," he said. "He's staying in the guest house for a couple of weeks while I'm gone." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me, and agreed to get the guest room ready for him, Jalen. I'd heard a lot about him from Michael, how he was an up-and-coming architect, how he was always polite and well-mannered. But what struck me when I first laid eyes on him was how much older he seemed in person. Late 20s, maybe early 30s, someone who carried himself with confidence and maturity that matched his career. I hadn't expected that, and it took me by surprise. Jalen stepped into our home with a warm smile, carrying his luggage. We greeted each other, and I offered to make him something to eat. He declined, mentioning that he had already eaten but would love to join me for dinner later. As I moved around, making small talk, he settled into the guest room and got himself comfortable. I wasn't used to having guests, especially not in such an intimate space. My husband was away, and now it was just Jalen and me in the house. It felt strange, like an invisible line had been crossed, even though nothing had happened yet. After dinner, I excused myself and went to clean the guest room. The soft sound of Jalen's voice, the faint rustle of him moving about, followed me down the hall. I couldn't help but feel a sense of discomfort mixing with curiosity. I'd been cleaning for a while when I started to feel a wave of exhaustion. My hands were sore from scrubbing, and my back ached from the awkward positions. I wiped my forehead, suddenly aware of how much work I still had left to do. That's when Jalen walked in. He had heard me from the hallway, and without saying much, he offered to help. "You look tired," he said, his voice soft but reassuring. "How about I give you a back massage?" For a moment I froze. A massage? From him? My mind raced, trying to figure out if this was something innocent, something that would be normal between strangers, or if it was a gesture carrying more weight than I was ready to acknowledge. Before I begin, let me know, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? As I hesitated, I found myself agreeing. It seemed harmless enough, but the moment his hands touched my back, something shifted. There was a subtle pressure as his fingers pressed into my muscles, working out the tension. I could feel the warmth of his hands through my shirt, and a strange tingle spread across my skin. His touch was gentle, but it felt intimate. He didn't rush. Every movement was deliberate, each stroke sending a quiet current of electricity through me. The world outside seemed to disappear. It was just the two of us in that moment, his hands moving with precision, and me trying desperately to focus on the small, professional voice in my head, reminding me this wasn't supposed to happen. As his hands touched my back, I couldn't ignore the pull I felt toward him. Before I continue, I want to thank all of my amazing subscribers for your support. If you want more emotional stories like this, please subscribe and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next part of this intense journey. The days after Jalen's arrival passed in a blur, and I found myself caught in a strange routine, one I never thought I'd be in. At first, I thought it would be simple and my husband's friend would stay here for a while and we'd be polite, as any guests and hosts would be. But as the days went on, something began to shift between us, something I couldn't ignore. Each morning, Jalen would find ways to help around the house, offering to bring in the groceries, fixing little things around the yard, helping with tasks I hadn't asked for. He seemed genuinely eager to be of assistance, but it was more than that. There was a quiet, almost unspoken connection that seemed to grow with every conversation we shared. We talk about everything, work, life, our dreams, and even the small, trivial things that made us laugh. At first, I thought it was the loneliness of being in the house without Michael, but the more time I spent with Jalen, the more I realized that it wasn't just the need for company, it was something much deeper. The more we talked, the more I began to look forward to his presence, the way his voice made the room feel warmer. It wasn't just about filling the silence anymore. It was something about the way he made me feel seen, in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. The more I saw him, the more I realized it wasn't just about the conversation anymore. By the time my husband had been away for over a week, something had already shifted between Jalen and me. We would talk late into the night, sharing stories about our childhoods, our loves, and even our regrets. It was like we were confiding in each other, and that bond was undeniable. But then there were the smaller moments, the ones that left me breathless and unsure of what was happening between us. I'd catch myself stealing glances when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his jaw would clench when he spoke about something that mattered deeply to him. I noticed the way he moved, how he held himself, and how his presence seemed to fill up the room. At times, when he'd walk into a room, it felt like everything around me became still, and all I could think about was him. It was so subtle at first that I almost convinced myself it was just my imagination. But it was no longer just friendly. I felt it, an attraction I couldn't deny, one that had been building in small, quiet moments. And that attraction began to feel dangerous, like a whisper at the back of my mind telling me to stop. Yet I couldn't. Every time he walked into the room, something inside me fluttered, a feeling I couldn't deny. If you're enjoying the tension, please like this video. It helps the channel grow, and I'd love to know what you think of the chemistry between these two. It had been a couple of weeks since Jalen first arrived, and our connection was undeniable. The long nights talking, the stolen glances, the moments that seemed to last forever. Every day felt like a subtle pull towards him that I couldn't fight, no matter how much I tried to suppress it. One weekend, we decided to go shopping together. It wasn't anything special, just a casual outing, nothing more than two people spending time together. But what happened that day, I wasn't prepared for. We got caught in a sudden rainstorm while driving back. The downpour was so heavy we couldn't see the road. We pulled over into a quiet spot, our car trapped, as the rain seemed to rage louder and faster. It was just the two of us in that car, alone in that confined space. My breath felt shallow as the silence between us stretched, thick with something I couldn't name. The air inside the car was warm, but I felt a chill creep into my bones. I wanted to speak, but every word seemed heavy, too much for the moment. I knew we had crossed a line the moment we were alone together in that car. He glanced at me, his eyes dark and unreadable, as if he too was feeling the tension but didn't know how to act on it. He shifted in his seat, the space between us feeling like an ocean, yet so close, so painfully close. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside me. Every thought, every hesitation seemed amplified by the rain battering against the car. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to tell him how I felt, but I couldn't. My mind screamed at me to stop, to remember my boundaries, but my heart didn't listen. As the rain intensified, so did the silence between us. It was like the world had disappeared, and all that was left was us. I could feel his breath, steady but measured, and I wondered if he felt the same pull that I did. It wasn't just the rain outside. It was the storm inside me that I couldn't control. We finally made our way home, and the tension between us still hung in the air. That night, Jalen stayed over, and I couldn't escape the feeling that something was different between us. We didn't talk much after getting back, but I could feel the unspoken words lingering, pulling us closer. As we sat on the couch, he turned to me, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his eyes searching mine for something I wasn't sure I could give him. "I've tried to keep this professional, but I can't help how I feel." The confession hit me like a wave, unexpected but so incredibly relieving. I couldn't hold it back any longer either. "I feel the same," I whispered. My chest tightened as the weight of our words settled between us. In that moment, everything changed. The space that had once been filled with tension now seemed full of something else, something undeniable, something that neither of us could pretend wasn't there. His words opened a door I had been keeping shut, and now I had no idea where this would lead. "What do you think of the growing connection? Is this something that will end well, or is it a dangerous game? Share your thoughts below, and I'll be reading every comment." The evening had taken a turn that neither of us could have predicted. The weight of what we'd been dancing around for days now hung between us, thick and heavy. There was no denying it anymore. The attraction we had was more than just a fleeting moment, more than some innocent flirtation. This was real. The way my pulse quickened whenever he entered the room, the way our conversations drifted into uncharted waters, it all pointed to one undeniable truth. And then, there it was. He broke the silence between us, his voice quiet, but the intensity in his words made my heart race. I've been trying to ignore it, trying to tell myself this is just a professional relationship, but it's not anymore. His eyes searched mine, holding something in them that was raw, vulnerable, and full of longing. "I can't pretend anymore. I feel something for you, something I don't know how to explain, but it's there, and it won't go away," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, my mind whirling. This wasn't just a confession, it was the moment everything changed. His confession shattered every boundary I thought I had. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I was too afraid to move, afraid that if I did, I would break whatever fragile thread was holding us together. And then, without warning, he stepped closer, his hand brushing against mine. The warmth of his touch sent a jolt through my body. Every part of me screamed to step back, to remember my role, my commitment to my husband. But then I saw the look in his eyes, a look that mirrored my own confusion, my own desire. And before I could stop it, he leaned in, his lips meeting mine in a kiss that was soft at first, tentative, as if neither of us could believe what was happening. But it deepened quickly, passionate, hungry, and filled with all the emotions we'd kept hidden for so long. It was as if time stood still. In that moment, there was no right or wrong, no husband or wife, no boundaries or restrictions. There was just us. His hands found their way to my back, pulling me closer, and I could feel the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath my fingertips. It felt like freedom, like liberation from everything that had kept us apart. But in the back of my mind, a voice whispered, "Once this happens, nothing will be the same." Once our lips met, I knew there was no going back. But what happens next? Do you think they should have given in to their feelings, or should they have walked away? Comment below and share your thoughts. I woke up the next morning with the weight of last night pressing down on me. The first thing I noticed was the silence. The house was still, and for the first time, it felt too quiet, too empty. I turned to the side, but Jalen was already gone. The space beside me felt colder than it should. He'd left without a word, without even a glance back. I sat up, trying to process everything that had happened. My thoughts were a mess of guilt, longing, and confusion. I knew what we had done was wrong, but I couldn't deny that what had passed between us was real, so real that it had felt like nothing else mattered in that moment. But now that the thrill had faded, I was left with the aftermath. The consequences were staring me in the face. I rubbed my eyes, the reality of the situation starting to sink in. The storm from last night had faded, but the one inside me? It was far from over. I thought about Michael, how much he trusted me, and how everything was now tainted. I had crossed a line, and I didn't know how to undo it. The morning after felt like a dream, one I didn't want to wake up from. I found myself pacing the room, feeling the pull of my emotions, those same emotions that had led me to this point. But now that the morning light was shining through the window, it all felt so complicated. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know if I could just pretend nothing had happened, or if I could go back to how things were. But I couldn't stop thinking about him, about what we'd shared, and how it had felt like we were on the edge of something bigger than either of us had been ready for. I knew I needed to take a step back, to give myself some space to figure things out. I needed to clear my head, and I knew he did too. We had agreed to take some time apart, to let the dust settle. But even as I said the words, I could feel the tension between us, still there, still undeniable. I knew things would never be the same again. But what was I supposed to do now? If you've enjoyed this story, like this video to show your support for more emotional journeys like this one, subscribe to see more and share this story with someone who believes in forbidden love. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when new stories drop. Your support means everything, and I'm so grateful to have you along for this journey.